Why can't governments just print more money and make everyone rich? Even in the United States, the richest country in the world, millions of people live paycheck to paycheck, and governments control the money supply. So, why not just print more money and solve the problem? Give everyone $1 million and make life easier overnight. It sounds like the simplest solution imaginable. But if it really worked, no country would ever be poor. So, what's actually stopping them? To understand why this doesn't work, we need to look at what printing money does to prices. And that's called inflation. Printing money and inflation. Let's see how inflation happens when a government prints money. When a government prints a lot of money and hands it out to everyone, people suddenly have much more cash to spend. Imagine waking up tomorrow and everyone has $1 million. At first, it feels exciting. Life suddenly seems easier. So demand for things like food, clothes, houses, cars, and services shoots up fast. But here's the catch. The economy can't magically produce more food, more houses, or more services overnight. To see why this matters, let's look at a simple example: a pizza shop. The shop has 10 slices of pizza and 10 customers. Each slice costs $3, so everyone can afford one slice. Everything feels fair. Everyone gets fed. Now imagine the government prints more money and hands out cash to people. Instead of having $3, all 10 customers now have $6 each. People feel hopeful. They think, great, I can finally get an extra slice. But the pizza shop still only has 10 slices. There isn't enough pizza for everyone to buy more. The shop owner sees what's happening and raises the price to $6 per slice. The good feeling disappears. Even with more money in their hands, everyone still gets just one slice. Nothing really changed, except the price. And people leave a little disappointed. When prices across the economy rise over time, that's called inflation. In simple terms, inflation means your money buys less than it used to. It happens when money grows faster than the economy can produce goods and services. More money chasing the same goods means higher prices. That's how inflation works. But what happens when inflation gets out of control? When printing goes seriously wrong, hyperinflation. When inflation goes out of control and prices rise extremely fast, this is called hyperinflation. And once it starts, everyday life can break down very quickly. What's shocking is that this happens more easily in poorer countries, where the economy struggles to produce enough goods. To make hyperinflation easy to understand, let's look at a real example: Zimbabwe in 2008. Zimbabwe was once called the jewel of Africa because it had strong farms and food production. But before hyperinflation, that production collapsed. Here's why that caused a problem. At the time, under President Robert Mugabe, the government took many large farms from white farmers and gave them to new owners very quickly, with little planning or support. Farming was badly disrupted, and food production fell sharply. This meant there was less food to buy in the country. At the same time, the government printed money to pay its bills, and that money was spent into the economy. Suddenly, people had more cash in their pockets. But there was less food and still not enough goods to meet demand. So everyone was trying to buy the same limited goods with more money. Sellers responded by raising prices again and again. More money, fewer goods. Prices rose fast. Let's pause for a second and think about that. That is basic economics. Prices of everyday essentials like food, water, and clothes began rising every single day. Savings lost value because money was worth less than before. Wages fell behind as the cost of everything went up. People felt poorer, even though they were carrying more cash. Inflation reached tens of billions of percent. The government even made it illegal for businesses to raise prices, but it didn't help. Shops stopped selling goods because they could not survive. Zimbabwe's money became so worthless that people used banknotes as wallpaper because it was cheaper than real wallpaper. In the end, the money stopped working altogether. Zimbabwe gave up its own currency, the Zimbabwean dollar, and switched to other currencies like the US dollar. Printing money did not fix the problem. It destroyed trust in the money. This is not theory. It already happened. But the US prints money. Why didn't it collapse? This raises an obvious question. The United States printed trillions of dollars, especially after the 2008 financial crisis and during COVID. So, why didn't it collapse into hyperinflation like Zimbabwe? The key difference is how the money was created and where it went. Let's walk through a simple example to show why hyperinflation didn't happen in the US. Imagine the US government needs money to pay its bills. So it borrows $1 million from banks and big financial institutions and gives them government bonds, IOUs that will be paid back later with interest. Now the central bank steps in. It decides to buy those government bonds back for $1 million from the banks. But it doesn't use existing money. Instead, it creates $1 million digitally, just numbers added on a computer. That new money is used to buy the same government bonds from banks and is added to the bank's reserve accounts at the central bank. So the banks now have more money sitting in their reserve accounts. Because of this, the money doesn't rush into the economy all at once. It spreads slowly as banks lend it out over time to businesses and families. And that slow spread is why, in the US, money printing doesn't instantly cause prices to explode. In Zimbabwe, it worked very differently. Under President Robert Mugabe, the government printed money to pay its bills and wages. Government workers, soldiers, and others were paid directly with newly printed money. That money entered everyday spending immediately, at the same time goods were disappearing. That's why inflation spiraled out of control in Zimbabwe, but not in the United States. The American Central Bank does this so banks don't run out of money. This allows banks to keep lending to businesses and families, which helps keep the economy running during a crisis. Governments often prefer this option because the alternatives are much harder. Cutting spending on things like education, healthcare, or public services is unpopular. Raising taxes on ordinary people can also cause anger and protests. Governments also use this money to help people during emergencies. It can support people who lose their jobs, help families afford food and rent, and fund healthcare when people are sick. There's another huge reason the US didn't collapse. Here's the part most people miss. The US dollar is the world's main currency. Countries all over the world use it to trade, save, and do business. Because of this, people trust the dollar, not just in the United States, but around the world. When money is trusted, people are happy to save it or spend it slowly because they don't expect it to lose value. At the same time, the US economy kept producing food, goods, and services. Because there was still enough to buy, prices didn't spiral out of control. The US increased the money supply, but not remotely at the runaway scale Zimbabwe did, and the dollar didn't lose trust the way Zimbabwe's currency did. This doesn't mean printing money is harmless. It can still cause inflation over time. It explains why a strong, trusted economy like the United States avoided hyperinflation, while weaker economies like Zimbabwe could not. So, if printing money doesn't create real wealth, what does? How everyone actually gets rich, not QE. The solution isn't printing money to pay debt. And it isn't giving people cash just to spend more. Those approaches increase demand for products without increasing the supply of products. The real path to wealth is increasing economic output. That means investing in things that create more goods and services like technology, manufacturing, education, and productivity. When an economy produces more real resources, the supply of goods rises alongside the money supply. So when people earn more and spend more, prices don't explode because there's more stuff to buy. A powerful real-world example of this is China. China didn't try to get rich by printing money and handing it out. It chose a slower and harder path. Instead of chasing quick cash, the government focused on building real capacity like factories, infrastructure, ports, power plants, skills. Year after year, money was invested into things that helped the economy produce more. At first, nothing felt dramatic. People didn't suddenly feel rich. But factories opened, jobs appeared, workers learned new skills. As production increased, incomes followed. People earned more and could spend more because there was more to buy. More money entered the economy, but it was matched by more goods, more services, and more real output. Because supply of products grew alongside money, prices didn't spiral out of control. Growth came from making more, not printing more. Over time, this approach transformed China from a poor country into one of the largest economies in the world. It's still considered an emerging economy, and many economists even predict it could become the world's next superpower. China's story shows a simple truth. You don't get rich by printing money. You get rich by producing things people actually use. Money can represent wealth, but it can't create it. The problem isn't money creation. It's printing money without building anything real. That's why printing money doesn't make countries rich. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more videos like this.